I asked my best friend Sarah to hire a temporary boyfriend for me to bring home during the holidays. It was the only solution I could think of. Every year, the same questions. When are you getting married? Why are you still single? You should really start looking for someone. And every year, I dodged them with a smile, pretending it didn't bother me. But this year, I had had enough. Sarah, always up for a challenge, was eager to help. "I've got just the guy for you," she'd said. "I promise he's professional, charming, and best of all, he'll make sure your family won't ask any annoying questions." The deal was simple. He would pretend to be my boyfriend for the holiday weekend, and if I didn't like him, I wouldn't have to pay a penny. If I did, then we could talk about turning this little arrangement into something real. No pressure, just a holiday cover-up. I had my reservations, of course. What kind of guy would agree to something like this? But Sarah was insistent. She had worked with this service before, and the guys were always perfectly suited for the job. When Jake Anderson arrived at the coffee shop where Sarah and I had agreed to meet, I wasn't sure what to expect. He wasn't exactly what I had envisioned. No, he was better. A tall guy in his late 20s, wearing a sharp, well-tailored suit that seemed like it belonged on someone who had just walked out of an upscale fashion magazine. His brown hair was perfectly styled, and his smile? It could probably melt any woman's heart if she wasn't careful. "Hi, Emily. It's nice to meet you," Jake said, extending a hand. His voice was smooth, professional, but with an underlying warmth that made it hard to dismiss. I blinked, still processing the fact that I was meeting a hired fake boyfriend. "Hey," I said, taking his hand, but immediately feeling a little off balance. There was something about his presence that was unsettling in a way, too polished, too perfect. "You look lovely," Jake added, glancing at me with what could only be described as practiced charm. I wasn't sure if I was more impressed by how convincing he was or how I didn't immediately roll my eyes at the line. "Thanks," I muttered, trying not to let the awkwardness show. We sat down at a small table, Sarah already sipping her coffee like she knew this was going to be a casual, everyday thing. Jake wasted no time in making the conversation flow easily. He asked about my job, my family, my plans for the holiday, everything that could make him sound interested in me without actually being interested, and I played along. But no matter how charming he was, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was just one more client to him, one more gig. And he probably had a dozen more just like this lined up. So why was I starting to feel like maybe, just maybe, there was more to this than I wanted to admit? As we talked, I noticed how everyone in the cafe seemed to be paying attention to him, the way his laughter came so easily, how he held eye contact, how effortlessly he could make someone feel like they were the most important person in the room. I tried to remind myself this was just part of the act. He wasn't real, after all. At one point, I couldn't help but glance at Sarah. She was watching us, clearly amused at how well things were going. I couldn't help but feel a little betrayed. This was supposed to be a one-off thing, something to keep my family off my back for a few days. But the way Jake was making it all seem so easy, so comfortable, I started to question my own motives. Was I really only in this for the act? Or was something else slipping into my thoughts? "So," Jake said, leaning forward slightly with a teasing glint in his eyes, "how's the deal work? If you're not happy with me, you don't have to pay. But if you are, we can talk about, becoming something a little more official. What do you think?" I blinked, thrown off by the directness of his question. Was he seriously suggesting that we could go from hired help to actual couple after a couple of days? I couldn't hide the surprise in my voice when I answered, I don't know. Let's see how well you do in the next couple of days first." Jake gave a slight chuckle, his smile widening. "Fair enough, but just so you know, I'm pretty good at my job." At that moment, I didn't know whether to be flattered or annoyed. "I'm sure you are," I muttered, sipping my coffee to hide my smile. Jake didn't take it as sarcasm, though. He just nodded as if it were the natural thing to say. It wasn't until later, after we'd exchanged a few more laughs and polite conversation, that Sarah dropped the bomb. You know, he's not the original guy I hired for you. I froze mid-sip, my eyes widening as I looked at her. Wait, what? Sarah's face was the picture of innocence, but there was a mischievous glint in her eyes. Yeah, Jake had plans from the start. He's been working with me for a while now. He's very good at what he does. My heart skipped a beat. Of course. Of course. Jake wasn't just some guy pretending for a paycheck. This was all part of a bigger scheme, something I was being swept into without even realizing it. I shot a glance at Jake, who was watching me with a knowing smirk, as if he already had me figured out. And just like that, what started as a simple holiday cover-up began to feel like something much more complicated. The lines between fake and real were starting to blur, and I didn't know if I was ready for that. The next morning, I was already preparing for the usual chaos of the holiday season, packing, organizing, making sure everything was in order before heading to my parents' house. But as I was about to grab my suitcase, I received a text from Jake. I'll drive you to your parents' house. No need to take the train. It'll be faster, and I'll be able to help with your luggage. I paused, staring at the screen for a second. He didn't have to do this. I had already planned to take the train, but something about his offer seemed so considerate. Too considerate. Was he just trying to be charming again, or was he genuinely trying to help? I typed back, hesitantly, I don't know, Jake. The train's fine. I don't want to be any trouble. He responded almost immediately. It's no trouble at all. Trust me, it'll be more comfortable. Plus, you won't have to carry those heavy bags around. I rolled my eyes. He was persistent. I had to give him that. And if I was being honest with myself, the idea of having someone take care of the little things like my luggage was appealing. Not to mention, he'd been nothing but polite and easy to talk to. After a moment of internal debate, I gave in. All right, fine. But only because I'm too lazy to carry all this stuff on my own. Jake's response was as simple, I'll be there in 20 minutes. When he arrived, he was already waiting outside in a sleek black car. Of course, Jake Anderson was never anything less than immaculate, even when offering a ride. As I got into the car, he greeted me with his usual warm smile, opening the door for me like I was the most important person in the world. I tried not to think too much about it, but I couldn't deny the way I felt. It wasn't just that he was attractive, it was the little things, the attention to detail. He had a way of making everything seem effortless. His calm demeanor, the way he made sure I was comfortable, the subtle way he paid attention to my needs, it was all starting to affect me in a way I wasn't prepared for. You seem quiet today, Jake said, glancing at me as we merged onto the highway. Something on your mind? I shook my head, trying to hide the growing tension in my chest. No, just thinking. It's been a long week. He nodded, but there was something in his eyes that made me feel like he saw right through my attempt at evasion. He didn't press further, though, which I appreciated. Instead, he shifted the conversation to something light, asking about my family, about what I was looking forward to most this holiday season. As the drive continued, I found myself becoming more comfortable with him. His easygoing nature made the time pass quickly, and before I knew it, we were pulling into the driveway of my parents' house. Here we are, he said with a smile, turning off the engine. Let me get your bags. I didn't even have time to protest before he was already out of the car, pulling my suitcase from the trunk with ease. I followed him up to the door, trying not to feel too overwhelmed by the fact that this was all just so easy, too easy. The moment we walked inside, my parents greeted us with open arms. My mom immediately fawned over Jake, clearly impressed by how polite and well-mannered he was. I wasn't sure what I was expecting, maybe some awkwardness or at least a hint of discomfort on his part. But he was perfect. The way he interacted with them, asking thoughtful questions and making them laugh, was enough to make me wonder if this was all part of some master plan. But then, in a quiet moment while my parents were busy with dinner preparations, Jake turned to me. "I'm really glad I could come with you," he said softly, his voice carrying a sincerity I hadn't expected. "I know this isn't the easiest thing, but I hope I'm making it easier for you." His words caught me off guard. It was just a casual comment, but there was something about it, the way he said it, the way he looked at me, that made me feel like there was more behind his actions than I had given him credit for. For the first time, I began to wonder if he was actually starting to care. Or maybe I was just reading too much into things. After all, he was just a hired guy. But as the night wore on, I found myself becoming more and more intrigued. Jake didn't just sit back and wait for things to happen. He was actively engaging with everyone, taking the initiative in conversations, and most importantly, he never once let me feel like I was left out or uncomfortable. At dinner, he kept asking me how I liked my food, whether I needed anything, even offering to refill my drink before I could ask. His attentiveness was unnerving. Every little gesture felt like it was part of some grand performance, and yet there was a raw honesty in his actions that made me feel like maybe this wasn't just for show. "Everything's perfect," I replied, trying to keep my emotions in check, but in truth, it wasn't just the food that felt perfect. As the evening came to an end and my parents went to bed, I found myself alone in the living room with Jake. He sat across from me on the couch, his eyes thoughtful. "I'm glad I came here with you," he said again, his voice low. "It's been fun." I smiled, but it felt strange. How could a temporary boyfriend make me feel like this? Was it just the situation, or was there something more? I wanted to brush it off, but something inside me told me that I couldn't ignore how he was making me feel. "You've been great," I said, my voice quieter than I intended. Jake grinned, and for a moment I swore I saw something more in his expression, a hint of something genuine, something that wasn't part of the act. But maybe I was just imagining things. "Well, if you need anything, I'm just a call away," he said, his voice soft but filled with sincerity. And in that moment, as I stared at him, I realized just how much I was starting to trust him. The next few days went by in a blur. Every time I thought I had Jake figured out, he'd do something that threw me off balance again. At first, I told myself it was all part of the act. He was just doing his job as a temporary boyfriend. But the more time I spent with him, the more I started to wonder if there was something more behind his perfectly rehearsed smiles and charming gestures. One evening, after dinner, we decided to go for a walk around the neighborhood. It had been snowing lightly all day, and the world outside looked peaceful, almost magical. The streetlights reflected off the snow, casting a soft glow over everything. I should have been thinking about how to politely tell Jake that we were just pretending, that this whole thing wasn't real. But as we walked side by side, I couldn't ignore the way he made me feel, like I was the only person in the world. "I never really get tired of this time of year," Jake said, his voice low and thoughtful. "It's quiet, peaceful, almost like everything slows down for a bit, you know?" I nodded, even though I wasn't sure if I entirely agreed. I had always found the holidays to be more stressful than peaceful, but with Jake by my side, everything felt different. For a moment, I could almost forget that he wasn't really mine, that this wasn't something permanent. But then, as we turned the corner near my parents' house, I saw something that stopped me in my tracks. A familiar face was standing across the street, staring at us. My heart skipped a beat as recognition hit me. It was Sarah, and she was watching us closely, her eyes narrowed in curiosity. I froze, unsure of what to do. Should I wave? Should I pretend like nothing was wrong? Jake followed my gaze and noticed her too. He didn't flinch, didn't even look surprised. Instead, he casually adjusted his coat and turned to face me. "You okay?" he asked, his voice steady, like this was just another ordinary day. I cleared my throat, trying to compose myself. Yeah, that's Sarah, my best friend. She must have seen us walking. Jake glanced back at her and then back to me, his expression unreadable. She seems like someone who's a little too interested in your personal life. I chuckled nervously, but the truth was, I didn't know what to think. Sarah's presence made everything feel complicated. I wasn't sure if she'd understand the arrangement or if she'd start questioning Jake's intentions. We kept walking, but my thoughts kept drifting back to her. What did Sarah think? Was she suspicious about the way I was reacting to Jake? As we approached the corner, Jake spoke again, his tone light but probing. Does she know that we're just pretending? I hesitated for a moment before answering. No, she thinks it's real. She doesn't know the whole story. Jake raised an eyebrow. Interesting. Does she know how much she's really missing out on? His words caught me off guard. He wasn't just talking about me, he was talking about himself. I wasn't sure whether to feel flattered or uncomfortable. Was Jake suggesting that Sarah was wrong for not seeing how perfect we were together, or was he just trying to make a point? Before I could respond, Sarah called out to us from across the street. Hey, Emily, got a minute? I sighed. Looks like we're about to have a conversation. Jake smiled, a little too knowingly. Sure, let's see what she wants. We crossed the street, and as we got closer, Sarah's eyes darted between Jake and me, a curious glint in them. Hey, you two? Everything okay? She asked, her tone casual, but her gaze lingered on Jake for a bit too long. I nodded, forcing a smile. Yeah, everything's fine. Sarah raised an eyebrow, clearly not buying it. You sure? You're looking a little cozy over there. Jake let out a soft laugh, the sound so natural that it felt like he belonged there, in this little scene between friends. We're just taking a walk. Is there something wrong? Sarah looked at him, then back at me, her smile widening. No, nothing at all. I was just curious, you know? It's not every day you see Emily walking around with someone so charming. I could feel myself blushing. Sarah wasn't just teasing. There was a hint of something else in her words, something deeper, more probing. And Jake, he wasn't helping. He was standing there, looking completely unfazed, as if he was the most natural thing in the world. Well, we're just getting some fresh air, Jake said smoothly, offering Sarah a smile. If you need us, we'll be around. Right, Emily? His use of my name sent a little thrill down my spine, and I tried my best to mask my reaction. Yeah, we'll be inside soon, I said, my voice a little quieter than I intended. Sarah nodded, though she didn't seem convinced. All right, then. I'll catch you later. As we continued walking back to my parents' house, I felt a strange sense of unease. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was shifting. Jake had a way of turning every situation into an opportunity to get closer to me, even if it was just a casual walk in the neighborhood. He was always so smooth, so calculated, and yet there was a part of me that couldn't deny how drawn I was to him. The more I tried to resist it, the more my feelings for him started to grow. I couldn't help but wonder, was I falling for him? Or was I just getting tangled in his game? The line between what was real and what was fake seemed to blur with every passing moment, and I wasn't sure how much longer I could keep pretending that I wasn't starting to feel something deeper, something I couldn't control. The days following our walk with Sarah were filled with an unsettling tension that I couldn't shake. I kept replaying everything in my head, Jake's easy charm, his carefully timed compliments, the way he seemed to know exactly what I needed before I did. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized something wasn't quite right. It wasn't until I accidentally stumbled across a conversation on his phone that the truth finally hit me like a ton of bricks. It was a simple thing, really. I had borrowed Jake's phone for a moment to look something up, and as I tapped away, I noticed a string of unread messages popping up from a group chat with a name I didn't recognize. Jake's Girls was the title of the thread. Curiosity tugged at me, and before I could stop myself, I unlocked the messages. What I found made my stomach churn. There were countless conversations, each with a different woman, sweet messages, plans for dates, flirtations that ranged from light teasing to outright confessions of affection. I couldn't look away, but I felt like I was suffocating with each new message I read. He wasn't just playing the role of a fake boyfriend for me. Jake Anderson was a serial dater, and I was nothing more than one of many in a long line of women he'd charmed into his web. I closed the phone quickly, my heart pounding in my chest. What had I gotten myself into? He had been so attentive, so perfect. How could I have been so blind? The next day I couldn't focus. The images of those messages kept replaying in my mind. Jake, the charming, attentive guy who made me feel like I was the center of his world, had been doing the same thing to God knows how many other women. The betrayal stung in ways I hadn't expected. I knew I had to confront him. I couldn't just keep pretending everything was fine when my trust in him had been shattered. That night, I invited him to dinner at a local restaurant, hoping the quiet atmosphere would give me the space to say what needed to be said. When he walked in, I forced myself to smile, but it felt like the world was pressing down on me. The familiar warmth of his gaze no longer made me feel safe. It made me feel exposed. "Hey, Emily." Jake greeted me, his voice as smooth as always. He slid into the seat across from me, his eyes scanning my face for any sign of the mood shift, but I wasn't going to make it easy for him this time. "Jake," I said, my voice tight, "we need to talk." He raised an eyebrow, obviously sensing the seriousness of my tone. "Of course. What's on your mind?" I hesitated for a moment, gathering my thoughts, but it all felt like a blur. The betrayal, the lies, the realization that I was just another name in his long list of women. "I saw the messages on your phone," I said quietly, watching his reaction closely. "The ones with all those other women." For the first time since I met him, Jake's expression faltered. It was only for a fraction of a second, but it was enough to confirm what I already suspected. He wasn't surprised. He wasn't even sorry. "I didn't mean for you to find out that way," he said, his voice lowering. He didn't apologize. He didn't offer any explanation, just a calm acceptance. I felt the anger rise inside me, but I kept my voice steady. "You've been stringing me along this whole time, haven't you? I'm just another one of your dates. This whole thing was just a game to you." Jake looked at me for a long moment, his eyes darkening. "It wasn't just a game, Emily. You have to understand, I'm not like other guys. I don't do casual relationships, but I also don't get emotionally attached easily. That's just the way I am." The words hung in the air between us, heavy with truth. He wasn't denying it. He wasn't pretending anymore. He had been honest about what he was, just not with me. And now the weight of his confession settled like a stone in my stomach. I swallowed, trying to fight back the sting in my eyes. So, what was I? Just another temporary girlfriend? A placeholder until someone else came along? Jake didn't look at me like I expected him to. He didn't seem ashamed or guilty. Instead, he looked conflicted, his jaw tightening slightly. "I never intended for things to get complicated with you. When I started this, I thought it would just be a job, something simple. But somewhere along the way, I started to care. And I didn't know how to fix that." I stared at him, trying to make sense of his words. He cared? Really? But then why had he kept all those other women in the picture? If he cared, why didn't he show it? "You're telling me you care about me, but you've been seeing other women the entire time we've known each other?" I couldn't hide the bitterness in my voice. "You're either lying to me, or you have no idea what being honest even means." Jake exhaled, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "I'm not asking for forgiveness, Emily. I don't know how to be what you want me to be, but I can't deny how I feel about you, and I'm not ready to walk away from this yet." The words hit me harder than I expected. He wasn't sorry for what he'd done, but he wasn't ready to give up either. It wasn't the apology I wanted. It wasn't the reassurance I had hoped for. It was something more complicated, something that left me torn between the attraction I still felt for him and the hurt he'd caused me. I pushed my plate away, suddenly too nauseous to eat. "I don't know what you want me to say, Jake. I'm not sure I can trust you anymore. You've made this whole thing feel like a game, and I don't know where I stand with you anymore." Jake's face softened, but he didn't press further. He knew this was a conversation that needed time to breathe. He sat back in his chair, his eyes never leaving mine. The silence between us was thick, filled with unspoken words, emotions I couldn't untangle. I had hoped for clarity, but now all I had was uncertainty. The next few days were a blur of confusion. After our confrontation at the restaurant, I couldn't shake the heavy feeling that had settled in my chest. Jake had been honest with me in his own way, but it didn't make the situation any clearer. If anything, it made it more complicated. I couldn't decide if I wanted to trust him or walk away. His confession, mixed with the things I had learned about him, left me feeling lost. Jake tried to reach out a few times, texts, calls, even a couple of visits, but each time I shut him out. I couldn't bring myself to face him, not when I didn't know what I was supposed to feel or where I stood. I didn't want to admit it, but the truth was, I was torn. The attraction I felt for him hadn't disappeared. It had only grown stronger, and now I didn't know if I was in love with him or if I was just caught in the mess of emotions he had created. It wasn't until a week later, when I was sitting in a cafe, mindlessly scrolling through my phone, that I received a message from Jake. "Can we talk? I owe you the truth." I hesitated. What else could he possibly have to say? But something in me, something I couldn't quite explain, made me put my phone down and type back, "Okay, let's talk." I wasn't sure if I was ready to hear more, but I knew I couldn't avoid him forever. So I agreed to meet him that evening, at the same coffee shop where we had first met. The place felt strangely familiar, a small haven of quiet and comfort in the middle of the chaos. When I walked in, I saw Jake already sitting at a table near the window, his posture casual, but his eyes intense, as though he had something important to say. He looked up when I entered, a small but genuine smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Hey," he greeted me softly, his voice warm. "I'm glad you came." I nodded, not sure what to say. There was a tension in the air between us, an unspoken understanding that neither of us had the answers, but we were both here, trying to figure it out. Jake gestured to the seat across from him, and I sat down slowly, feeling the weight of the conversation ahead. "I've been thinking about everything we talked about," he began, his tone more serious than I had ever heard it before. "And there's something I've been hiding from you, something I didn't want to admit, even to myself." I watched him carefully, unsure of what he was about to say. Part of me wanted to stop him before he could say anything that would make this more difficult, but the other part of me needed to know the truth. "I've been in love with you for a long time," Jake said, his voice steady but filled with a vulnerability I hadn't expected. "Even when I was just supposed to be your fake boyfriend, I couldn't help it. I've tried to fight it, but I can't anymore. I'm not pretending anymore, Emily. I care about you, more than I ever thought I could." The words hit me like a wave, sweeping away everything I had been holding on to. I opened my mouth to respond, but nothing came out. My heart raced, and my thoughts scrambled to process what he had just said. Could it be true? Was he really in love with me, or was this just another part of the game he had been playing all along? Jake leaned forward, his eyes searching mine for any sign of what I was feeling. "I know I messed up," he continued, his voice softer now, almost pleading. "I know I hurt you with my actions, and I'm sorry for that. But I can't keep pretending like I don't feel this way. I'm not asking for you to forgive me right away. I just want you to know the truth. I can't keep lying about how I feel." I looked down at the table, trying to steady my breath. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the truth, straight from his mouth. But now that it was here, I didn't know what to do with it. The truth was, a part of me had already known. I had seen the signs, the way Jake's eyes softened when he looked at me, the way his gestures were always just a little too perfect. But I had refused to acknowledge it. I had told myself it was all just part of the act. I never wanted to admit that I was falling for him, that I was letting myself get swept up in something that felt so real. But now, as I looked at him, I realized how much I had been lying to myself. "I don't know what to say," I finally whispered, my voice trembling. "I'm so confused, Jake. I don't know if I can trust you. Not after everything. You've made this all so complicated, and I don't know where I stand with you anymore." Jake's face fell, and he reached across the table, his hand resting gently on mine. "I understand. I get why you're scared. I've made a mess of everything. But I'm not asking for you to trust me right away. I just want you to know that I'm here, and I want to try to make things right, try to prove to you that this is real." I felt a lump form in my throat, and I couldn't hold back the tears that had been threatening to spill for days. I had been so scared of this, of feeling something real for Jake, only to have it fall apart. But now, as I sat there with him, I couldn't deny that a part of me wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that this wasn't just another game. "I don't know if I'm ready for this," I said, my voice breaking. "But I'm willing to try, to see where this goes." Jake smiled, his eyes softening with relief. "That's all I'm asking for, Emily. Just a chance." And in that moment, everything shifted. The uncertainty that had been hanging over us for so long began to feel a little less heavy. Maybe it wouldn't be easy, and maybe we still had a lot of things to figure out. But one thing was clear, we were both ready to face it together. Our relationship had entered a new phase, one that was more uncertain and raw than anything before. But for the first time, I wasn't afraid to see where it would take us. Because deep down, I knew I had already started to fall for him too. And that scared me more than anything else. The days after our conversation at the cafe felt like a constant tug of war in my chest. On one hand, Jake had been nothing but sincere in his actions. He had apologized, opened up about his feelings, and promised that he wanted to make things work. He even went out of his way to show me how much he cared. Small gestures like sending me flowers just because, planning little surprise outings, and always making sure I was comfortable, even in the smallest of moments. But on the other hand, a voice inside my head kept whispering doubts. Was this really real? Or was Jake just a master at convincing me he was? Was I falling for his charm, his carefully constructed persona, only to end up heartbroken when everything inevitably fell apart? It wasn't that I didn't trust him. I wanted to. I desperately wanted to believe that what we were building could be something lasting. But I had been hurt before, and I wasn't sure I was ready to take that leap again. The stakes were higher now. This wasn't just some short-term arrangement anymore. If I gave in to my feelings, if I allowed myself to fall for him fully, there was a chance that I'd be setting myself up for more heartache. I spent hours staring at my phone, debating whether to text him or leave him alone for a while. Jake had been patient with me, never pushing me too hard to make a decision, but the pressure of the situation was starting to weigh on me. Was I ready to face this new reality with him, or was I just inviting more emotional turmoil into my life? It wasn't until Jake called me one evening that I realized just how much I had been avoiding him. I stared at the phone screen for a long moment, feeling torn. He had been nothing but kind and sincere, but my own insecurities kept me on edge. "Hey, Emily," Jake's voice came through, calm and steady. "I know things have been a little complicated lately, but I just wanted to check in, see how you're feeling." I closed my eyes, leaning back against the couch. His voice was reassuring, warm. It made my heart flutter and my stomach twist at the same time. I'm okay, I replied softly, not knowing if I was being truthful or not, just thinking a lot about everything. Jake paused on the other end, sensing the uncertainty in my tone. I get it. I know I've asked a lot of you lately, but I just want you to know that I'm here for you. Whenever you're ready, whenever you feel like you can trust me, I'm not going anywhere. His words were simple, but there was so much weight behind them. It was clear that he wasn't backing down, that he wasn't planning to walk away. And in that moment, I realized that it wasn't just him who had been hesitant. I had been, too. I'm not sure I'm ready to trust you completely yet, Jake, I admitted, the words coming out before I could stop them. I want to. I really do. But I'm scared. I'm scared of getting hurt again. I heard him let out a soft breath on the other end, almost like a sigh of relief. I know you are, and I'm not going to rush you into anything. I just want you to know that I'm here, and I'm not leaving. I'll give you the time you need. The sincerity in his voice made something inside me soften. It was everything I had needed to hear. He wasn't just saying the right things. He was proving them with his actions. He was willing to wait for me, to give me the space I needed. That kind of patience, it wasn't something I was used to. I don't know what this will turn into, I said, my voice trembling slightly. I don't know if I'm ready to give you everything I have, but I want to try. Jake's response was immediate, his voice filled with emotion. That's all I'm asking for, Emily, just a chance to show you that I'm not going anywhere, that this is real. And for the first time, I believed him. There was no bravado in his words, no hint of manipulation. He wasn't trying to win me over with promises or grand gestures. He was simply offering me the space to make my own decision, to choose him on my own terms. The next few days were a mix of clarity and confusion. I spent time with Jake, and every time I did, I found myself drawn deeper into him. The way he made me laugh, the way he listened to me when I spoke, the way he remembered the smallest details about me, it all felt so real. But there was still that nagging voice in the back of my mind, asking if I was just being swept away by the idea of him. It was hard to ignore how easy it was to be with him. But as much as I wanted to believe in this, believe in him, there was still that part of me that feared how easily things could fall apart. I don't know if I can keep doing this, I said one evening, after a quiet dinner at his apartment. We had been sitting on the couch, just talking, and it felt so comfortable, so natural. But as I spoke, I realized how much I was holding back. Jake turned to me, his eyes soft but serious. Doing what, Emily? Being with you, I whispered. I want to be with you, but I'm scared. I'm scared of opening up, of letting myself fall for you and then getting hurt. Jake took my hand, his fingers warm against mine. I'm not going anywhere. I know it's hard, but I'm not asking you to give me everything overnight. I just want a chance to show you that I'm real, that what we have is real. For a moment, I couldn't speak. I just looked at him, taking in the depth of his words. Maybe this wasn't just a game for him. Maybe he really was in this for the long haul. And maybe, just maybe, I could let myself trust him. Okay, I said quietly, my voice barely above a whisper. Okay, I'm willing to try. Jake smiled, the warmth in his eyes spreading to his entire face. That's all I need, Emily. In that moment, everything shifted. The uncertainty that had clouded my thoughts for so long began to clear. Just a little. We were standing at a crossroads, both unsure of where the path would lead. But for the first time, I felt like I was ready to take the next step with him. We both were. And whatever happened next, at least we were in it together. The days that followed our conversation were a blur of emotions, both familiar and foreign. On one hand, Jake and I were moving forward, but there was still something nagging at me. Something deep down that I couldn't shake. The clarity I had hoped for wasn't coming as easily as I had imagined. Instead, everything felt a little too complicated. My family, of course, was the first to notice. It wasn't like they had missed the shift in my mood. They knew something had changed, even if I hadn't said it out loud yet. It was during Sunday dinner, with everyone crowded around the table, that my mom decided to ask the question I had been dreading. "So, Emily, dear, how are things going with Jake?" she asked, her voice laced with that motherly curiosity. She didn't say it in an accusatory way, but I could tell that she was fishing for something more. My parents were always full of questions about my relationships, or rather, my lack of them. I had been single for a while now, and their concerns had started to grow into something more like impatience. I froze mid-bite, my fork still hovering above my plate. It wasn't the question itself that startled me, it was the weight of it. I had been avoiding this conversation, hoping it would just fade into the background. But now, here it was, glaring at me. "Things are going well, I guess," I replied cautiously, hoping it sounded casual enough. But I could hear the hesitation in my own voice, the uncertainty I had been carrying around with me. My dad, who was always the quieter one, glanced up from his plate. "Is it serious, then?" he asked, his tone more neutral, but the underlying concern was clear. "I mean, we don't want you rushing into anything. You know that, right?" I could feel the weight of their expectations pressing down on me. They wanted answers, but I didn't have them yet. Was Jake the right person for me? Was this relationship even real, or was I just swept up in a moment of weakness? I wasn't sure anymore. "He's a nice guy," I managed to say, my words feeling like they came from someone else. "But I don't know. It's complicated." The conversation shifted after that, but the weight of their questions lingered in the air, like a thick fog I couldn't escape. My mom gave me that look, the one that told me she would be waiting for more answers, and soon. That night, I went home, my mind racing. I kept thinking about what my parents had said. Was it really complicated? Or was I just overthinking everything? Why was I so afraid to fully commit to Jake? Was I scared of him? Or was I scared of the potential heartbreak? I had been avoiding this. The pressure from my family, from my friends, it was beginning to pile up. They all wanted to know where things were headed, and the more I tried to push it to the back of my mind, the more it felt like it was crowding in on me. The following day, as if the universe was trying to prove a point, I ran into Sarah at the coffee shop. She had that look in her eyes, the one that told me she knew something was up. "Hey, Emily," she said, smiling as she slid into the seat across from me. "So, how's everything going with Jake?" I sighed, leaning back in my chair. "You really want to know?" "Of course," she said, raising an eyebrow. "I've been keeping an eye on you too. There's something different about the way you've been acting lately." I ran a hand through my hair, feeling frustrated. "I don't know. It's just, I don't know if I can trust him. Everything's moving so fast, and I don't know if I'm ready to take that next step. My family's been asking a lot of questions too, and it's just, it's a lot." Sarah nodded, her eyes sympathetic. "I get it. I do. But I think you're just overthinking it. Jake really seems to care about you, you know? He's been different with you, from what I can tell." I couldn't help but feel a bit defensive. "I know, but I just don't know if I'm ready to give him everything. What if I'm making a mistake? What if I'm falling for him for all the wrong reasons?" Sarah's expression softened. "Look, I can't tell you what to do, but what I can tell you is that you don't have to figure it all out overnight. It's okay to be unsure. Just take it one step at a time. Don't let pressure from your family or anyone else make you rush into something you're not ready for. You have to do what feels right for you." Her words lingered with me long after our conversation ended. What felt right for me? I wasn't sure anymore. I wanted to believe in Jake. I wanted to believe that we could build something real together. But there were still so many doubts in my mind. Was this relationship built on something solid, or was it just a product of the circumstances? I couldn't tell anymore. The next time I saw Jake, we met at the park. The weather had gotten warmer, and it seemed like the right kind of day for a walk. He was waiting for me near the entrance, his hands in his pockets, a small smile on his face when he saw me. He looked perfect as usual, but the smile didn't quite reach his eyes, not like it used to. Something about this felt different. "Hey," he said, his voice softer than usual. "How are you?" "I'm fine," I answered quickly, forcing a smile. "Just busy, you know?" Jake tilted his head, studying me closely. "You don't seem fine, Emily. What's going on?" I hesitated for a moment before finally letting it all spill out. "I don't know if I'm ready for this," I said, my voice trembling. "Everything's happening so fast, and I don't know if I can trust you fully. I don't know if I'm ready to dive in and give you everything. I'm scared of getting hurt, and my family, they keep asking about us, and it's just too much, too soon." Jake's face softened, and he reached for my hand, his touch gentle. "I get it," he said quietly. "I'm not going anywhere. I'm serious about you, Emily, but I'm not rushing you. If you need time, I'll give it to you. I'm not going to pressure you into anything. I just want you to know that I'm here, and I want to be with you." I looked up at him, trying to read his expression. There was nothing there but honesty. He wasn't asking for anything he hadn't already given me: patience, time, and the space to figure out my own feelings. But the truth was, I was still stuck, torn between my own fears and the possibility of something real with him. The pressure was mounting, but I didn't know if I was ready to face it head on. For the first time, I realized that the choice was mine to make, and it terrified me. "I need time," I said softly, my voice barely above a whisper. "I need to figure this out, and I don't want you to wait for me, but I just need some space." Jake nodded, his grip on my hand tightening for a moment before he let go. "Take all the time you need, Emily. I'm not going anywhere." And just like that, the uncertainty that had plagued me didn't feel as suffocating. But it was still there, lingering in the back of my mind. The crossroads we were at had never been more clear, and now I had to decide which path I was ready to take. The days after my conversation with Jake at the park were filled with quiet contemplation. We had agreed to take things slow, to give me the time I needed to sort through my thoughts and emotions. But I couldn't deny the growing pull between us. Every time we saw each other, every touch, every smile, it all felt so real. But was it? Or was I just letting myself fall for something that wasn't built to last? It wasn't until one evening, a few days after our talk, that Jake came over with a serious look in his eyes. We had been spending more time together, talking, laughing, and slowly getting to know one another in ways we hadn't before. But now, I could sense that something had shifted. It wasn't just about passing time or pretending anymore. This was about something deeper. We sat on the couch, our legs almost touching, the soft hum of the TV filling the background. Jake had been quiet for a while, and I could tell he was thinking, carefully choosing his words. Finally, he turned to me, his gaze steady but vulnerable. "Emily," he said, his voice low and sincere, "I need to ask you something." I met his eyes, my heart suddenly racing. "What is it?" Jake paused for a moment like he was weighing his next words. "I know things have been complicated for you, and I don't want to pressure you into anything, but I think it's time for us to be real, to be honest with ourselves. Are you ready to take the next step, to really be with me, for real?" His words hit me like a wave, and for a moment, I didn't know how to respond. Was I ready? Could I trust him enough to let go of all my fears and uncertainties and just be with him? Part of me wanted to say yes, to jump in with both feet and embrace whatever this was. But another part of me, the cautious part, still hesitated, still questioned whether I could truly trust him. I don't know," I said, my voice quieter than I intended. "I want to be with you, Jake. I really do. But I'm still scared. I don't know if I can trust that this is real, that we can make this work." Jake's expression softened, and he reached for my hand, squeezing it gently. "I understand, Emily. I really do. Trust doesn't happen overnight, but I'm not going anywhere. I'm not asking you to make a decision right now. I just want you to know that I'm serious about us, about you. I'm willing to be patient. I'll wait as long as it takes." His words, so simple yet so profound, hit me in a way I didn't expect. There was no pressure, no urgency in his voice, just a quiet sincerity that made my heart ache. He wasn't asking for anything from me except the chance to show me how much he cared. And in that moment, I realized that I wanted to give him that chance. "I want to try," I whispered, the words slipping out before I could stop them. "I'm scared, but I want to try. I want to see where this can go." Jake smiled, a soft, relieved smile, and leaned in, brushing a stray lock of hair behind my ear. "That's all I need, Emily. We'll take it one step at a time, together." In that moment, everything felt simpler. There was no more confusion, no more hesitation. We weren't rushing into anything, but we weren't holding back anymore either. We had taken the first step towards something real, something we both wanted, but hadn't known how to embrace fully until now. Over the next few weeks, our relationship continued to evolve in ways I hadn't expected. It wasn't just about the big gestures anymore. It was the quiet moments, the way Jake would make me coffee in the morning, or the way he would look at me with that soft, knowing smile when I said something he found amusing. It was the way we talked about our pasts, our fears, our hopes for the future. It was about opening up to each other in ways we never had before. There were still moments of doubt, moments when I questioned if I was doing the right thing. But every time those doubts crept in, Jake was there, steady, reassuring, and always patient. He never pushed me, never demanded more than I was ready to give. And in his actions, I saw that this wasn't just a game for him anymore. This was real, and he was committed to making it work. One afternoon, we were sitting in a small park near my apartment, watching the kids play soccer and the older couples walk hand in hand. Jake had his arm draped around my shoulders, and I leaned into him, feeling the warmth of his embrace. I had never felt so comfortable, so safe with anyone before. "You know," he said softly, "I never thought I'd find someone like you." I looked up at him, a smile tugging at my lips. "What do you mean?" Jake turned to face me, his eyes serious. "I've always been the kind of guy who doesn't let anyone get too close. I thought it was easier that way. But then I met you, and everything changed. You make me want to be better, to be someone who's worthy of you." My heart skipped a beat. No one had ever said anything like that to me before. The sincerity in his words, the vulnerability in his eyes, it made everything feel real. "I never thought I'd be able to trust anyone again," I said quietly. "But you've shown me that it's possible, that maybe, just maybe, we could make this work." Jake's smile softened, and he leaned down to kiss me gently on the forehead. "We will, Emily, one step at a time." And as we sat there together, watching the world go by, I realized that for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of what the future might bring. Whatever happened, we were building something real, something worth fighting for. And that was enough. The sun was setting as we walked through the quiet streets of the city, the soft glow of the evening light casting a golden hue on everything around us. It had been an ordinary day, one of many we had spent together recently, but there was something different in the air that night. Something unspoken, yet unmistakable. Jake had been unusually quiet, his hand holding mine a little more firmly than usual, like he was bracing himself for something. I could feel the tension in his grip, and I couldn't help but wonder what was going through his mind. Had I missed something? Was something wrong? We reached the small park near the edge of town, a place we often came to just sit and talk. The sound of leaves rustling in the trees and the distant hum of the city felt calming, but tonight there was a weight to the silence between us. Jake stopped in his tracks, pulling me gently to face him. The expression on his face was serious, but his eyes were soft, almost vulnerable. He searched my face for a moment before speaking, his voice low and steady. "Emily," he said, his tone almost reverent. "There's something I need to tell you. Something I've been keeping inside for a while now." I looked up at him, feeling my heart rate quicken. It was the kind of moment where you know something big is coming, but you don't know if you're ready to hear it. "I've been falling in love with you," he said, the words coming out quietly but with undeniable certainty. "I know I said this was just supposed to be a temporary thing, and I know I've made mistakes along the way, but I've never been more sure of anything in my life than I am of this. I love you, Emily." The world seemed to stop for a moment as his words hung in the air between us. I blinked, stunned, my breath caught in my throat. This wasn't just a passing confession or something said in the heat of the moment. This was real, raw, and sincere. Jake took a step closer, his hand lifting to gently cup my face. "I've never felt this way about anyone before. I don't want to waste any more time pretending or holding back. I want you to be my girlfriend, Emily. I want you to be a part of my life, fully and completely." I stared at him, my heart racing in my chest. This wasn't what I had expected, at least not so soon. But as I looked into his eyes, I realized that everything about this moment felt right. The doubts that had plagued me for so long, the fears about getting hurt, the uncertainty about whether I could truly trust him, somehow they all seemed to fade away in the warmth of his gaze. I had spent so much time fighting my own feelings, questioning if this was real, if I was just being swept up in something that couldn't last. But in that moment, it all clicked. I had been so scared of losing control, of letting myself fall in love, but the truth was, I had already fallen. And it wasn't just because of his charm or his words. It was because of the way he made me feel safe, the way he cared for me, the way he was willing to fight for this, for us. I stepped closer to him, my hand reaching up to rest on his chest, just above his heart. "Jake," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "I love you too. I love you more than I've ever let myself admit. But I've been so scared of what might happen if I give myself to you completely. I've been holding back because I didn't want to get hurt again." Jake's expression softened, and he gently pulled me into his arms, wrapping me in a tight embrace. I buried my face in his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath my ear. "You don't have to be scared anymore, Emily," he murmured, his voice filled with warmth. "I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going to hurt you. I'm here for you, no matter what. We'll take this as slow as you need. But I need you to know that I'm all in. I want you, all of you." His words wrapped around me like a blanket, soothing the last remnants of doubt and fear that had been clinging to my heart. I knew that this wasn't going to be easy, that there would be challenges ahead. But in that moment, standing there with him, I felt more certain than ever that I was ready to take the next step. "I'm ready," I whispered, pulling back slightly to look him in the eyes. "I'm ready to be with you, Jake, for real." A slow smile spread across his face, and he leaned down to kiss me gently on the lips. It was soft at first, tentative, as if we were both savoring the moment before it became real. But then, as the kiss deepened, it became more passionate, more certain. When we finally pulled apart, I could see the relief in his eyes, the joy that mirrored what I felt in my chest. "You make me so happy, Emily," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You have no idea how much this means to me." I smiled up at him, my heart full. "I'm happy too, Jake, really happy. I'm so glad I didn't let my fears keep me from this." Jake chuckled, brushing a stray lock of hair from my face. "Me too. This is just the beginning, Emily. We're in this together." And with that, everything else fell into place. The uncertainty, the hesitation, it all faded into the background as I realized that this was the moment I had been waiting for. No more doubts, no more second-guessing. This was real. We were real. And I was ready to take the next step, fully and completely, into a future with him. In that moment, I knew that everything had changed. We had crossed a line, stepped into a new chapter together, and nothing would ever be the same again. And for the first time, I felt completely at peace with that. As the days passed, everything between Jake and me started to feel right. We were no longer hiding behind walls of uncertainty or fear. The doubts that had plagued me for so long seemed to fade into the background, replaced by a new sense of confidence and trust in each other. For the first time, I wasn't questioning every little thing we did or said. I wasn't wondering if I was making a mistake by opening myself up. I had finally let go of the fears that had held me back. We were a couple now, not pretending it anymore, not testing the waters. We had crossed that invisible line between uncertainty and commitment, and there was no turning back. And for the first time in my life, I didn't want to turn back. What we had felt real, deeper than anything I had experienced before. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours, and that was enough. Jake was everything I had hoped for and more. He was patient, understanding, and always there when I needed him. He made me feel valued, cared for, and most of all, loved. And in return, I gave him my heart, knowing that he would handle it with the same care and tenderness that he had shown me from the very beginning. But like any relationship, we weren't immune to challenges. There were moments when things weren't easy, when we had our disagreements, or when life threw unexpected obstacles our way. There were moments when I felt frustrated, when I wondered if we were truly on the same page, and times when I questioned if we could continue building this future together. It was during one of those moments, a few weeks after we officially became a couple, that Jake and I found ourselves sitting across from each other in the kitchen, the soft hum of the refrigerator the only sound between us. We had gotten into a small argument about something trivial, but the tension in the air felt much bigger than the issue itself. It wasn't the first time we had disagreed, but this one felt different. "I don't want to fight with you, Emily," Jake said, his voice calm but laced with frustration. "But I also don't want to pretend that everything's perfect all the time. It's not. And it's okay to have differences." I sighed, feeling the weight of the situation pressing on me. "I know, Jake. I don't want to fight either. But sometimes I just feel like we're not seeing eye to eye on certain things. And it scares me. I don't want to screw this up. Jake reached across the table, taking my hand in his, and looked me in the eyes. "We're going to have disagreements, Emily. That's normal, but what matters is that we don't let those things tear us apart. We face them together, we communicate, and we work through them. That's what being in a relationship is about. It's not always going to be easy, but as long as we're in this together, we'll figure it out." His words settled over me like a warm blanket, and the weight in my chest slowly eased. He was right. I had been so afraid of making mistakes, of falling short, but the truth was, relationships weren't about being perfect. They were about growth, compromise, and learning to work through the hard moments side by side. "I'm sorry," I whispered, squeezing his hand. "I'm just scared of messing this up. I've never had anything like this before." Jake smiled softly, his thumb brushing over the back of my hand. "I know, but we're both new to this. We're learning together. And I promise, I'm not going anywhere. We'll figure it out, step by step." That was the moment I realized something important. Every challenge we faced, every bump in the road, would only make us stronger as a couple. We didn't have to be perfect, and we didn't have to have everything figured out. What mattered was that we were committed to each other, to making it work, no matter what life threw our way. From that day on, our relationship continued to grow and evolve. We didn't have all the answers, but we had each other. And for the first time in my life, I felt like that was enough. The weeks turned into months, and as we navigated the ups and downs of life together, our bond only deepened. We spent our weekends exploring new places, making plans for the future, and sharing moments that I knew I would cherish forever. Every day, we grew more comfortable in our love, more confident in our ability to face whatever came next. There were still moments of doubt, moments when the future felt uncertain, but those moments were fewer and farther between. Because with every challenge we faced, with every new milestone we reached, I knew that Jake and I were stronger together. We were learning, growing, and building a future that was built on trust, love, and mutual respect. As we stood hand in hand one evening, watching the sun set over the horizon, I realized that I had found the person I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. The doubts, the fears, and the insecurities that had once clouded my heart had all but disappeared. Because in that moment, standing beside Jake, I knew that love had finally overcome all the obstacles that had once stood in our way. "We're really doing this, aren't we?" I said, my voice soft but filled with wonder. Jake turned to me, his eyes filled with the same sense of certainty and love. "Yeah, we are, together." And as we walked forward into our future, hand in hand, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. Because this was only the beginning, and I was ready to embrace it all with him by my side.